Hi, I'm Aaron Tomlinson. Welcome back to the channel. In this video, I just want to take a little bit of time and talk about how positive thinking and or negative thinking is tied to our perceptions. When we talk about perceptions, I like to use a quote from a really old book called Science and Sanity that was written by a guy named Alfred Korzybski. And Korzybski is famous for the quote, "The map is not the territory. The map is not the territory." This quote became more famous in the 70s with the development of neurolinguistic programming and the positive psychology movement and things like that. When we're talking about perception, we're talking about the map. We're not talking about the way things actually are in reality. We're talking about how we perceive things based on our emotional conditioning, based on our belief system, based on our preferences, based on our temperament, based on our personality. There are so many things that come into play with how we perceive things. The truth is that we are bombarded with about, scientists estimate, 200 million pieces of information at any given moment in time. And that as conscious beings and sentient beings, we're really only able to focus on 5 to 9 of those 2 million pieces of information at any given time, 5 to 9. So that means that we have to delete out the vast majority of what's going on in order to create a perceptual image and experience inside of us of our reality. So we're not engaging reality, we're engaging the reality that we choose to focus on, or more specifically, we're focusing on the parts that don't get deleted out. And this creates our perceptions. Now, our perceptions play a lot with our emotions because most negative emotions that people experience, they experience from a place of being in fight or flight. I'll do another video on this later. But if you perceive a threat, then your body will begin to react in all kinds of different ways through the autonomic nervous system. You'll begin to release all kinds of chemicals in your body, things like cortisol, like adrenaline, like epinephrine, and this creates certain emotional states in the body. There's nothing mystical about emotions. There's nothing spiritual about it. Sometimes we talk too spiritually or too mystically about things like emotions and trauma resolution and positive thinking and all these kinds of things, when the truth of the matter is you've never had a thought that wasn't in your head, or that you didn't perceive as being in your head at least, and you never had a feeling that you didn't experience somewhere in your body. Any emotional feeling that you have, you've experienced somewhere in your physical body. And the reason that you and I experience emotions in our physical body is because of the chemical reactions that are taking place in our body based on our perceptions. So in other words, there doesn't have to be an actual threat in front of you for you to perceive something as threatening and then immediately go into feelings of fight or flight, go into the anger side of fight or flight, wanting to be angry, or the avoiding, fleeing, running, hyper anxious side of fight or flight that we often experience. So people who experience a lot of anxiety, people who experience a lot of depression, more often than not, they find themselves in this fight or flight state, and their body is responding, and that's creating these emotions. But the reason that we find ourselves in this fight or flight state is because of our perception. And again, perception, we don't perceive the world as it is, we perceive the world as we are. So if we have a lot of negativity going on inside of us, then that tells us something about ourselves. If we have a lot of positivity going on inside of us, that also tells us something about ourselves. But at the end of the day, it's all about perception and focus. Let's be honest. Life deals us all kinds of mixed bags of things. There's always something negative out there. There's always some social injustice that we can fight. There's always some wrong that needs to be set right, or something in the world that we have resistance, really strong resistance towards, that we wish was different. And it's not different. It just is what it is. But by the same token, there can be a lot of really wonderful things and good things out there as well. It's never all one or the other. It's never an either or. There's usually always an and both. There's usually always a silver lining in every cloud. There's usually always a fly in every ointment. And so we can, to a large degree, if we put some conscious effort into it and we put some intention into it, choose which thing that we are going to focus on. Are we going to focus on the negative things that are happening in our world and in our life? Or are we going to focus on the positive things? Now, I'm not, again, this is not an either or thing. I'm not saying that you go totally over into positive thinking and just ignore everything negative that's out there. But by the same token, how we feel about our lives, how we feel about ourselves can really make a difference in how we approach life. Do we feel resourceful? Do we feel empowered? Do we feel hopeful? Most of the time, if we're going to feel resourceful, if we're going to feel powerful, and if we're going to feel hopeful, we're not feeling attacked. And if we're not feeling attacked, then we're not in fight or flight state. And if we're not in fight or flight state, it's because we either perceive no threat or we're turning our attention away from what we perceive as being the threat and turning it towards what we perceive to be the answer or the solution. It really comes down to, are we problem focused or are we solution focused? And if we are solution focused, then we are going to be more focused on positive thinking and positive emotions and positive feelings and feeling more resourceful and be able to act in a more resourceful way. For one thing, when we go into a fight or flight mode, when we go into a stress mode, when we go into anxiety, when we go into depression, when we go into these so-called dark emotions, we know for certain, as a biological fact, that the brain and the energy in the brain goes down into the limbic system. It goes down into what some people have called the reptilian brain, the more animal brain. And all of our problem-solving skills, all of our ability to work through situations, our people skills, our ability to recognize when someone's actually a threat to us and when they're not, all of that stuff is happening in the neocortex. It's not happening in the limbic system. It's happening in the neocortex. The neocortex is where you have language. It's where you have learning. It's where you have problem solving. It's where you have self-reflecting. It's where you have imagination. And if we're in fight or flight, those things are not seen as necessary because we just need to react in our physical bodies through either fighting or fleeing. And so it's a non-resourceful state. It's not conducive to problem solving. It's not conducive to rational thinking. It's not conducive to emotional intelligence. It's not conducive to social intelligence. And so we end up mistaking people for enemies that are really our friends. We end up misreading situations, misreading cues, and we come out with all kinds of stuff that doesn't help us to solve problems. So at the end of the day, I want to leave you with this. We have the ability to choose what we focus on. And the power of positive thinking is locked into our perceptions. One of the things that happened, my mother was an amazing woman. She went through a lot of really difficult and hard things in her life. And one of the things that I found, a couple of things actually, I found a journal, I found a filing cabinet, at least 3 or 4 items that my mom had kept, where she kept a gratefulness journal or she kept gratitude files, things that she was thankful for. And my mom was able to make it through a lot of different things that were difficult for her and able to be the kind of person that she was, which was a person that everyone admired. When she passed away, we got hundreds and hundreds of cards and phone calls and emails and Facebook contacts from people who said that she always made them feel loved, she always made them feel valuable, she always made them feel welcome, and she always kept a positive attitude. I can assure you, through every hardship that she went through, she always kept a positive attitude because she chose on purpose to sit down and write down the things that were positive in her life. Even though there might have been 90% of what was going on in her life that was negative, she would focus on that 10%. And by focusing on that 10%, she shifted her energy, she shifted her attitude, she shifted her perception, and she was resourceful and she was loved by a lot of people. So I hope this was helpful for you. Thank you for taking a little bit of your time out of your busy schedule to watch this, and I'll be with you again in another video. Again, I'm Aaron Tomlinson. Thank you for watching this video. If you haven't liked or subscribed to the channel, I'd love it if you do that. Also, we have a Facebook group called the New Day Global Facebook group. The link is in my description. You can join that and get more content there.